This is Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast, with your hosts, Brandon Spinner and Michael Burns.
And welcome into another edition of Barrels and Barrels, a bourbon and baseball podcast. I am Brandon Spinner, as always, alongside one of my best buddies, Michael Burns. Mikey, how you doing, my man?
Doing pretty good. I am excited for what we got tonight for another bourbon or whiskey review. So,
yeah, we're
always happy to see a package come from you, Brandon.
Yeah, we've had a couple of them come here the last couple of weeks and months, and we're jumping into another highly sought after bottle. I grabbed this. Actually, I did not grab this. I have to give a shout out to a friend of mine, Kristen Swilly. She grabbed this for me because I was at work. So big shout out to Kristen. She is my whiskey mule when there's something that may be out there. So big tip of the hat. A big tip of the hat to Kristen Swilly, one of my coworkers. You've heard us talk about her before here on Barrels and Barrels, but this is where I got that from. Before we jump into this, Michael and I, we match, right? You see that? See that? You can only see this on YouTube. We've got some T-shirts, so if you want to get a T-shirt from us, reach out. We've got those out for sale. You can buy
soft.
very comfortable material, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can reach out to us, whether that's Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, but more likely to be via email. That is barrels N, the letters N in the middle there. So barrelsandbarrels@gmail.com. Or also we're on Instagram and Facebook, as well as YouTube, all under the same handle at Barrels N Barrels Pod. So that's where
you made it so easy for him, Brandon. You made it so easy.
Very easy. On Twitter, they didn't allow enough characters, so it's Barrels and Barrels. There's no pod at the end, but if you start typing that in, you'll be able to find us. And if you're watching on YouTube, above our heads, you see where Michael and I can be found on Instagram, right there, at whiskey_weather and at BNB_Burns. So we're doing a whiskey review. This is a bourbon review this week, Michael. Booker's. It is one of those highly sought-after limited-time offers released multiple times a year, but different batches. This is the Booker's 2203. This is called the Kentucky Tea Batch. It's been a highly rated one, as we just saw. Fred Minnick, I think, rated it, 6th on his list?
6th. Yep, 6th, I believe.
So it comes in with some high praise. This comes in at 7 years, 4 months, and 14 days. It is a higher proof pour at 126.5.
Which Booker's usually is, isn't it?
Yeah, it's always going to be the higher pour. So
I remember my first Booker's.
I remember my first Booker's. This is the second Booker's I've had, but the first one that I opened, actually. Because I got them within weeks of each other, to be honest. I've never been able to find them, and when I found them back in the day, I didn't have enough money to drop $80 or $90 on a bottle. I was buying that $25, $30 bottle. So this is, again, the Kentucky Tea Batch. As always, if you've ever bought a bottle of Booker's, it comes with a card. It comes with the stamp on the bottle itself. Just that normal wine-shaped kind of bottle with the wax over the Booker's seal. And this is the 03 release. So this is the third out of 4 here in 2022. And this, again, as I mentioned, was called the Kentucky Tea Batch, coming from Jim Beam or the James Beam Distillery. So this third release of Booker's is called the Kentucky Tea Batch. While some may flavor their whiskey with tea leaves, Booker loved to flavor his water with bourbon, something he called Kentucky tea. Which is kind of funny, right?
Flavor your water with bourbon?
Yes. So as you can imagine, Dad loved the flavor of bourbon, especially his Booker's bourbon. Since Booker's is over 100 proof, the flavor still pulls through when added to water. So he'd take 1 part bourbon and 4 parts water and just enjoy his drink. So one night when a reporter was at Dad's house for supper, he asked why Dad drank Kentucky tea. Dad quickly replied, "Why would I flavor my water with tea leaves when I can flavor my water with bourbon?" It was that simple. Kentucky tea was his drink. He would drink it with a country ham or a fish dinner and would say, "You need to sip the right proportion of Kentucky tea to really appreciate the food." And that's what I love about the batch story. It always has some sort of story behind the name, whether it's the food that they ate, the drink that they drank named after someone in their family or someone that was close to them. And I think that's what makes Booker's, the story there, so cool and so awesome.
I want to do 4 parts bourbon, 1 part water.
Hello. Let's try that on another podcast in the future and see where that goes. So, as always, it does have the Master Distiller notes. Again, this is coming from Fred No, the Beam's 7th generation Master Distiller.
All right.
So, made of 6 production dates that were aged in 6 different warehouses. It breaks down, so this is going to be a lot. So, if you can't follow it, I totally understand. 2% of it came from the 3rd floor of the 7-story warehouse 5. 1% came from the 4th floor of warehouse X. 1% also came from warehouse D, which was on the 4th floor. 12% came from the 4th floor of warehouse I. 24% came from the 5th floor of warehouse Q. 14% came from the 6th floor of warehouse Q. Warehouse Q must have been a pretty good warehouse. And then 46%, so just about half of the barrels, came from the 6th floor of warehouse Z. So if you were able to keep that all together...
No chance.
Yeah, no chance. But the batch was pulled on a hot and humid day in July. Color is, what would you say? Golden? Amber?
It is amber. It is darker. Yeah. It is on the darker side.
So... I'm not going to look at the tasting notes because I don't want to. I will put this out there. I really have enjoyed this. If you're watching on YouTube, as you can always do.
You're about halfway through that thing.
I opened this on Thanksgiving. I had a pour with my buddy from Whitetails and Whiskey. And not with him, but like we talked and I poured this. And since then, I sent out a sample to you, and I sent out another sample out to, I believe it was Jason at Burpees. Bourbon and Burpees. I must be dyslexic because I always say the handles backwards.
You're thinking it must not be bourbon first.
Right. Bourbon and Burpees, Jason out in Columbus. I either sent this to you or I sent you the little book because I also sent a sample out to Meeting Minutes, which Michael's got a picture from him. I've got a picture as well. If you haven't checked him out, go check him out. His stuff is fantastic. Oh, there it is. Merry Christmas, Michael. But as far as the Bookers, you've been able to nose it and smell it a little bit. It's got that amber and golden color to it. What is your first thoughts on the nose?
I mean, cinnamon smack in the face. It is a cinnamon on the nose, very much. And I don't know if it's because of the cinnamon, but what comes to my mind is pine cone. It's like pine. And I think it's the cinnamon mixing maybe with the oak. So I get cinnamon and then pine cone.
Pine cone. That's a very unique nose to it.
What you got over there? Left and right nostril.
Left and right nostril. I've got cinnamon. The vanilla comes through as well as that oak, which, I mean, it should for the most part. There's a nuttiness to it on the nose to me. I can't tell if it's probably more walnutty. Maybe nutmeg a little bit. I don't know if my mind is tricked because it's called Kentucky tea, but I do have some like green tea feel to the nose.
Right.
But there's a little bit of that. It's not terribly sweet.
No. The cinnamon is very strong to me.
Now I can get maybe a little bit of a mint on the nose, and I wonder if that's like part of the tea or the pine cone that you were describing.
Pine cone.
But
now for Booker's, for me, I had a Booker's that I bought right when as one of the highest proof bourbons I ever bought. I actually left the saw it was 120 proof, I think, or 129 proof, and I was like, holy cow.
Holy smokes.
I think all I had on my shelf was like 4 Roses small batch and Woodford Reserve, and I saw 100 something. I was like, oh my gosh. Left the store, and I was like, that actually sounds kind of fun. I went back and bought it. But for me, for Booker's, at least the one I have, it is very, I mean, it drinks as it's proofed. Yep. It drinks hot.
It drinks hot, but it's not always overpowering, right? Like it drinks hot, but it's not like
it's not killing the flavors.
Right. There's a time where the heat will take away from the flavor, and I don't necessarily get that from Booker's. I think they do a really good job most of the time at finding the right blend and finding the right flavors out of this.
But if you were someone who is typically, I mean, drinking Jack and Coke, and you're like, hey, I want to try some bourbon, and I want to try it neat or something, this is not it. This is not something for anybody. This one, like we said, it slaps you a little bit. It drinks hot, but it doesn't kill the flavor. For me, that hotness spreads to the roof of the mouth and just carries that whole where you get then. It doesn't mess with the palate, but your mouth feels that heat.
Mm-hmm. So, you had a chance to try it.
I've got I'm trying to get past the heat a little bit. I wonder if I need to make a Kentucky what was it called? A Kentucky tea?
Kentucky tea, which is 1 part bourbon, 4 parts water.
I wonder if I want to just do 4 parts and just add a little bit of water to maybe tame that to pull out some flavors.
I'm sure tame with a drop of water. As far as just off the bat, what do you get anything on the palate with the sip?
I do get that cinnamon. Caramel comes in with after that cinnamon. Definitely. I'd say that's the strongest aspect of it I'm getting is caramel. But it's not sweet caramel. It's just the flavor. So this is not actually, I was about to say it's not sweet, but if I'm just sitting here and let that thing linger, it's getting sweeter. So I took a little sip that time. If you watch the documentary Neat, and he says, take the littlest sip to coat your mouth. If you do that with something hotter like this, it's easier to pour. You get less heat and more flavor out of it. So this is definitely a sipping whiskey.
I've also heard that if you take it and let the sip linger in your mouth and take a breath out to where you blow the ethanol from the whiskey out of your mouth, you'll be able to pull in a lot more of the flavor too. Have you ever tried that?
No, so I try to stay away from air. I feel like the air increases the heat. So I try not to breathe too much when I've got it fresh on the palate. But I get a lot of caramel up front. The cinnamon isn't overpowering like it was on the nose. Maybe some. No, I don't get a strong vanilla. It's mostly just a caramel. No butter. What do you got, Brandon? You took a couple sips here.
Yeah, it's got a woodsy feel up front. Like it's more on the bitter side up front, and I think it becomes sweeter over time. And I don't know if that's the heat talking, but to me, I get like a woodsy, bittery, like walnutty nuttiness up front that changes to almost a peanut butter butterscotch towards the end, and has that caramel and even a little hint of tea. You've searched for the tea; it's there, but it's. I think that's part of my brain again thinking. It's called Kentucky tea. But I had this on Christmas Day, and I didn't...
What pour number, though, on Christmas Day was it?
It was number 2, I think. It was
okay.
number 2.
Okay.
So I went from this to the Little Book Chapter 6, and I really appreciated this one a lot more than the Chapter 6. And we'll do another review on that here down the road.
Get ready.
But... So
I added 2 drops of water to this, what I got left, to see if I could tame it a little bit and make a 4 parts bourbon, or maybe this is like 10 parts bourbon.
10 parts to 1 part at this point. As far as the finish, it's not for a 126 proof. It doesn't last or linger as long as I would have expected it to, but it's not like it just fades away. It's there. It's just we've had other barrels and other bottles here recently that a couple 30, 40 seconds after you've had the pour, like it's still there. I feel like
still taste the flavor.
I feel like after 30 seconds, the flavor's there. It's that lingering, not pop roxy feeling, but like that rye spice at the end just kind of fades away. Where I kind of like when my bourbon holds on a little longer when you haven't sipped it. Like, and maybe that's what makes this a little easier to go to right away is because you're looking for more of it. But what with the water did it change it all for you?
I feel like it did expand the flavor into my cheeks a little bit more. It gave it a chance to not be overpowered. But I think this is still what I was saying earlier, that it still drinks a little hot. I think it's hard to overcome unless you are purposely drinking it knowing it is hot. But if you go into this like you've never had it, you're gonna sit down at a whiskey bar and say, "Hey, you know what? Give me the Bookers." You're gonna be like, "Hot damn, this is spicy."
Yeah, and what I love about the Bookers is that it comes in this cool box, right? If you're looking on YouTube, right? Some people have made it into like napkin trays for like camping and all that, but it's hot, and every Bookers is gonna come in hot. I don't personally think this is overpowering to me. I think the finish maybe lacks towards the end, but it's not awful. And like, if there was one thing I would change, I think it's the finish in my mind, personally. I think the back end of the finish lacks a little something, but it comes in. It's got a lot of bitterness to it at the beginning, and then I think it gets sweeter over time. I go with, again, like that caramel butterscotch towards the end after like a woodsy, like bitter peanut brittle at the beginning. And even like that bitterness comes like with tea, right? Like most tea is bitter until you add sugar or something to it. It's not sweet right off the bat. It's got that woodsy feel. So I can see where this comes in with that Kentucky tea thought or flavoring to it.
Right.
So on our Barrels and Barrels Bourbon and Baseball podcast rating scale, which you can find on our Instagram page, but a quick breakdown of that, we go from Hall of Fame at the top of the top, All-Star second, and that means it's very good. It ranks above most of all the bottles out there. About 10%, 20% of players become All-Stars in their careers, but only 1% become Hall of Famers. Right. Everyday player is somebody that's going to constantly be on your shelf in your lineup as a baseball player. And I would say someone that you're going to crush, right? Like that's someone you depend on. And then a bench player is someone who's going to be on the team. It's a role player. It's not something
key situations.
Right, key situations when you're going for that. And then DFA, which is our final and last ranking, which means sayonara, you're not great. We don't have any value for you.
We call that bottle into the office privately and tell them, you know what, you're just not going to make it. So on our scale, I think because of how hot it drinks, it's a bench player for me. It's something that I'm going to want to crave a little bit for that moment. It's not something I'm going to go to very, often. I'm not going to crush this bottle. I think just because of that level of heat. I think it's something that, hey, you know what? I could use that every now and then. It's not bad. It's just something that is a good change of pace. Mm-hmm. What about you, Brandon?
So this is where you and I differ, and we say it time and time again. We should make a drinking game for our podcast of every time one of us says the cool thing about whiskey, the cool thing about bourbon. Is everybody's palates are different, right?
And we drink.
You and I have a different palate than each other, right? We differ, and our listeners, hopefully, somebody locks on with Michael, somebody locks on with me, because everybody has their own thoughts, their own feelings. I'm going All-Star.
Really?
Yeah. You've seen the bottle. I just showed it on YouTube, and for those of you who are watching on YouTube, you saw it. I'll take it out of the box again, but for those listening...
You've crushed it.
There's about 40% of the bottle left, and it's been open since Thanksgiving, and we're recording this right before the new year.
So 30 days?
Yeah, and I've got a ton of other bottles that I've gone to over that time as well. So this is one that I feel...
I've crushed.
It's one, and this is why I call it an all-star. It's one that I pour, and I go to it again, right? Not every bottle you pour... and then you have a second pour or a third pour that night from that same bottle. This is one that if I've got it, probably the only thing I'm drinking that night, because now that I'm talking and it's got that sweet feeling in my, like in the mouth feel as we described it. I thought it got sweeter towards the back half, and this makes me want to grab another drink, another sip, and then ultimately another pour. I think I texted you that on Christmas Day, didn't I? Like, man, I really enjoy this, and I've crushed it. It's 40%, 35% left. It's a little
poor guy.
It's a little hot. Well, now I got to go open batch 2 because now I got to get even to see where that ranks up, and I think I might be a little disappointed. But yeah, I think I'm going to go All-Star on this just because.
There you go. Congratulations.
It's one of those that
he's been selected to the All-Star team.
Yeah, you've gotten the ribbon for the NL All-Star team. He even already has the ribbon on the bottle. So
I'm laughing that you put him to the NL All-Star team,
yeah,
by the way.
I'm taking NL. you're the
oh, no.
You're the Empire, my man, which is the AL in our books. We're both NL guys.
Oh no, I got to pick from the White Sox side of the time. Oh,
yeah, I'm going to go all-star with this one. I think it's
awesome.
different. I don't think everybody's going to love this, honestly. But I think it's either a love it and love it, or a just it's okay. And
right.
And that's where we fall. And it's probably going to be one of those divisive bottles for a lot of our listeners. So if you've had this, we'd love to hear what you think. Whether that's on Facebook.
What team are you voting for, AL or NL right here? What side do you want?
Well, so far you have 1 All-Star, I have 3. So by rankings, I have a better team so far because it's more stacked. No, that's not how it goes. But we love all of your opinions. We'd love to hear what you think of this Booker's Kentucky Tea batch, batch 3 this year here in 2022. As we're turning the calendar to 2023. I'm excited about what Booker's is putting out there. We've got a couple other samples from Booker's to talk about, and Jim Beam just overall from what the James Beam Distillery is putting out there. I really enjoy this pour. I've had several other Bookers before in the past, and this is towards the top of the rankings of a lot of the Bookers that have been put out there, in my mind. So,
I mean, yeah, this was top 6 on Fred's list. And
yeah.
I'm looking at Fred's list. It has, some name brands mixed in and some others, you haven't heard of mixed in. So
I think of 2022, that has probably been the most consistent and the more reputable list. I don't think it always is, but I would fall in line. Well, I think that's where that lands.
There you go. Well, congratulations, Brandon. It's always fun to find a bottle like that, an All-Star. I'm glad you enjoy it.
Yeah, and hopefully we can find a few more for you here down the road. So as you just heard, to recap, I gave this an all-star rating, but Michael gave it a bench. And again, here's your drinking game. That's what makes this awesome. Is everybody has a different palate, a different thought. Also, I drank mine out of a snifter. You have yours in a Glencairn. Is that?
Yes.
I wonder if the glass this allows a little more of that heat to escape. So
you think so?
Yeah,
I feel like the
it's a little thicker.
The mouth is the
same. Mouth, yeah. I think the mouth is a little thicker and allows a little more of that to escape. It's not terribly different, but I do think that makes a little bit of a difference.
So maybe I'll try my second half because I didn't pour the whole thing in my aged or.
And we could do a recap later on, maybe in a later episode, to see if Michael has changed his mind. You never know, right? Like some players develop over time and become a better player.
I need a sign right here, Brandon. Can you add this graphic? Booker's 03 is a bench player. Changed my mind.
Yeah, sitting at the desk. But thank you for listening. If you've made it here so far, 23 minutes into another episode of Barrels and Barrels, a Bourbon and Baseball podcast. As you heard us early in the episode, we've got T-shirts. We also have stickers. If you'd like one of those, reach out to us. We're looking at bigger and better things here as we go into the 2023 calendar year, but also the baseball season and the bourbon release season over the next couple of months. If there's anything you want to ask us to try, or if you want to send us a sample, we'd love to take that. Reach out to us by email, which we listed earlier. But again, that is barrels, the letter N, barrels at gmail.com. Also, Barrels and Barrels Pod on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Please rate us, review us here, whether that's Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeartRadio, or we're also on Amazon. Thank you so much for listening. As always, thank you for your support. Big shout-outs to all of those of you who share our stuff on Instagram and on Facebook. We can't tell you how much it means to us. Love interacting with you guys.
Yes. Absolutely.
So, Michael, any last words regarding Booker's Kentucky Tea batch number 3, or just anything going on in the world?
Nope. Catch me on the flip side.
Catch you on the flip side. At BNB_Burns for Michael. I am at whiskey_weather on Instagram. Thank you again for listening. We hope you have a happy, healthy, safe start to your new year. Go to the gym, because I know that was probably one of your resolutions here, and stick to that resolution. But that's all I have to say. We just thank you again for everything. Michael?
Let's go.